This is the French flag, also called the tricolore in French. Now, while the origins of this flag lie during the French Revolution, I'm going to go back a little bit further to have a look at some of the other flags of the French and where this one ultimately came from. So, to go back, we're going to go back to the 9th century when Europe was mostly conquered by the Frankish Empire, and in 840, when it was split between various parts, West Francia is what would become the Kingdom of France as we know it today. Now, one of the flags that was used very early on during the 100 Years' War, for example, was the Oriflamme, which is the red flag in the top of this picture. And when this flag was flown on the battlefield, it was a symbol to strike fear into the hearts of the enemy, because when the Oriflamme was flying, it meant that no prisoners were to be taken, and that everyone on the battlefield was to be killed. Although it was first flown at Agincourt, so as you can imagine, it kind of backfired on the French there. Now this symbol is the Fleur-De-Lis, and the Fleur-De-Lis means flower of the lily in French, and it's a very important French heraldic symbol, and it's used by a lot of different people throughout Europe, throughout a lot of different heraldic traditions. But it's very special for the French, and especially the French royalty, so it's important for early French flags. Now, the Fleur-De-Lis is often associated with Saint Joseph, although there are a few different ways in which we can interpret the Fleur-De-Lis and where it came from and why it became so important for especially the French. Pierre-Augustin Boussier de Sauvage writes, "The old Fleur-De-Lis, especially the ones found in our king's scepters, have a lot less in common with ordinary lilies than the flowers called flambas in Occitan, or irises, from which the name of our own Fleur-De-Lis may derive. The Franks, before entering Gaul itself, lived for a long time around the river named Leie in Flanders. Nowadays, this river is still bordered with an exceptional number of irises, as many plants grow for centuries in the same places. These irises have yellow flowers, which is not a typical feature of lilies but Fleur-De-Lis. It was thus understandable that our kings, having to choose a symbolic image for what later would become a coat of arms, set their minds on the iris, a flower that was common around their homes and is also as beautiful as it was remarkable." For a long time, French shields were an azure colour with lots of small flowers on them, presumably the Fleur-De-Lis as mentioned. But during the reign of Charles V of France, it was officially changed to having 3 golden Fleur-De-Lis on a slightly darker blue background, which became an important symbol. And it was actually incorporated on lots of different heraldic symbols, including the English one, because the English also claimed the French throne during the 100 Years' War, which was why that all kicked off. Another interesting thing that we can bring in here is Joan of Arc, who's called Jeanne d'Arc in French. And actually I know a French couple who named their little daughter when she was born Jean, after Jeanne d'Arc, so you can see it's still an important thing in France. And she says that her banner was a banner of which the field was sprinkled with lilies. The world was painted there with an angel at each side. It was white of the white cloth called bocassin. There was written above it, I believe, Jesus Maria. It was fringed with silk. And this is important because lots of subsequent French flags of the French royalty featured white very prominently, and also later on, because the white colour had been used by Joan of Arc, and that's why it was seen as special as being a national colour. And this flag, I kid you not, was actually the flag of the French Navy for a very long time, and not just when they were running away from the Dutch and English navies. But it was also used during the Bourbon Restoration from 1814 to 1830, which was after Napoleon had been exiled and then after he had been definitively defeated at Waterloo in 1815. And also this flag, which featured again the 3 golden Fleur-De-Lis, was used by royalist forces like in the Vendée Revolution during the French Revolutionary Wars. Speaking of which, it's time we move on to the actual French flag, the current French flag, le tricolore. So how did we go from this white Bourbon flag with the Fleur-De-Lis featuring prominently to a blue, white and red French Republican flag? Well, it's obviously thanks to the French Revolution, and lots of the French revolutionaries were wearing blue, white and red cockades. Now, why were they wearing this when they were attacking places such as the Bastille? Well, Paris featured very heavily in the French Revolution, and the Parisian coat of arms were blue and red. The blue for Saint Martin and the red for Saint Denis. Saint Martin is famous for sharing his cloak, and St. Denis is famous for carrying his head around like a badass. That's how we get the colours of the French flag. why we get the blue and the red from the Parisian colours from St. Denis and St. Martin, and the white from from Joan of Arc and her heroic defence against the English. It's the French, okay? They stole our flag and I'm not happy about it. Hit the music.